The 2018 Minibike World Championship, sponsored by Backflips, comes from Kettering, Great Britain. It's the second edition of the biggest minibike competition on the globe and an opportunity to claim bragging rights on the largest international stage. Reigning title holder Mike Vallard returns to defend his crown in a field of 18 riders who've qualified to participate at the highest level over 5 scoring races to determine the destination of the 2018 crown. The first of the weekend's races then about to get underway. The revs build and the gate drops on the 2018 Minibike World Championship. Fast start from the number 57, Bradley Pocock, but across the front of him into the first turn, it's Dominic Foreman who takes the whole shot, and around the outside comes James Cook. Out of position compared to his qualifying effort, up in second place, side by side between the top two from last season's championship, and down goes Bradley Pocock. Pocock, separated from his machine, is going to have to come through from the back of the field. Contrasting fortunes then for Mike Vallard, the reigning champion, who's already moved through and up into second position. Didn't quite get the whole shot there. A few riders up ahead of him, but not for long. Vallard is through to second position. And now James Cook, who's already been dispatched by one, is dispatched by another, as Blaine Blackwell, the reigning world number 5, comes through into third position here, ahead of James Cook. So a fast start from Cook. Not a good start at all from Justin Sykes, who was 9th as they crossed the timing beam for the first time. He's now moved up ahead of Sebastian Kierkegaard, and I wonder whether the Dane's suffering from some mechanical problems, because he appeared to be slowing as the riders went over to the far side of the circuit. Mike Vallard hits the front, passing Dominic Foreman as they came through the section for the first time, and Vallard immediately starting to gap Dominic Foreman here, and Foreman getting himself a little bit twisted as they came through the hairpins as well. So Vallard is well away already. Dominic Foreman, though, has broken clear of Blaine Blackwell in a second position, courtesy of such an excellent start. And Bradley Pocock, by contrast, has got to work his way through from the back of the field. It's Vallard who leads then by 3 seconds over an isolated Dominic Foreman, well clear of Blaine Blackwell in third position. And a good first lap from Justin Sykes, who's managed to work his way through from the fringes of the top 10 and up into fourth position. There is Sykes then, having made it into P4 ahead of Valentin Pentier of France, who sits in P5, and then James Cook, who's already dropped down to 6th. So Cook, who finished down in 20th in the British Championship, had an opportunity to really make a name for himself in the early laps here by making a fast start, but he is starting to drop away now from the lead pace. The focus will be twofold. Can Justin Sykes get in amongst it, in with the top 3 positions in this first moto, and how far up the field can Bradley Pocock get? Down in 17th position after the mechanical problems for Sebastian Kierkegaard. There is the number 57, and these are passes for position. That's 16th place taken, and now around the outside, that is 15th place taken off Mathieu Provost of France. So Bradley Pocock starting to wend his way through the field. It's pretty close for second, third and fourth positions now, but it appears that Dominic Foreman is dropping back into the path of the 2 riders directly behind him, and Mike Vallard isn't slipping with him. 6 seconds the gap after 2 full laps for Vallard up front. Dominic Foreman second, Blaine Blackwell third. Justin Sykes is now starting to work lines on him, and Blackwell is going to have to be wary here because Sykes appears to be significantly faster than the 2 riders directly ahead of him. In fact, the American was 2 seconds faster than Blaine Blackwell last lap around. We'll have a look on the tail of Blackwell as they come off the tallest point on the circuit here at Champs Park. For the moment, Sykes is being held back. He cuts to the inside line though, and Blackwell's got it slightly wrong there, and Sykes the perfect opportunity for him to come through for third position. Now next up for him will be Dominic Foreman, and again Sykes was 3 seconds faster than Dominic Foreman last lap around and has had no problems reeling him in whatsoever, despite the fact that he had to dispatch Blaine Blackwell on his way through. So it's only a matter of time surely before Sykes makes a pass on Foreman for second position. Pass there for Bradley Pocock, who continues to work his way up through the field. Yet another overtaking manoeuvre from him. I think that's for 10th position on Scott Polman, the number 9, who has done a good job early on with a decent start, but he is starting to drop back into the clutches of the group directly behind him now. Sykes still hasn't found a way past Dominic Foreman as yet. This is for second position, remember, and best of the rest behind Mike Vallard, who is over 2 seconds a lap faster than anyone other than Justin Sykes at the moment. Further back down the order, Bradley Pocock putting in a good shift as well. It'll be interesting to see how quickly he can get on terms as Sykes makes an overtaking manoeuvre down the inside of Dominic Foreman, and in an unconventional place as well at the top of the circuit, and already starts to gap Foreman. So it's Vallard now who leads ahead of Sykes in second. Third place with Dominic Foreman, Blaine Blackwell in fourth position, and then the two Frenchmen, Valentin Pentier and Raphael Bezassier in fifth and sixth positions, ahead of David Lamb and James Cook. But Bradley Pocock will be swiftly working his way through and onto their tails. This is Jody Burton now for ninth position. Pocock easily through, gets it a little bit wrong on the exit though of that hairpin, and back past again comes the number 717. And of course the challenge here for Pocock is that as he gets through the field progressively, these overtaking manoeuvres are going to become tougher and tougher. He has though moved into the top 10 now, and gradually as this race has gone on, slower lap last time around, a 1 minute 18.6, but understandable as he works his way through traffic. 1 minute 14's being set by Mike Vallard and Justin Sykes matching him last lap around, but Vallard has a 9-second advantage, and from there it's going to be tough for Sykes to try and get back on terms. We've seen throughout the 2017 Minibike World Championship just how consistent Mike Vallard is, and he's done a good job in the appearances he made in the Minibike British Championship earlier on this season, just to keep his hand in on UK shores as well. So Vallard very much the man to beat, and Bradley Pocock has left himself up against it by giving his main championship rival such a significant advantage in the opening race of the day. Justin Sykes then 9 seconds back, but he's broken well clear now of Dominic Foreman in third position. Here is the number 57, Bradley Pocock. He's a little bit isolated at the moment. He's got had a 5-second gap to make up last time around on the edge of the top 6, as we see James Cook further down the order. This is for 10th position, James Cook having been relegated down from P2 in the early stages, and slightly slower than the two riders directly behind him at the moment is Cook, and that could leave him under pressure in particular from the number 369, that's Daniel Lee. But as you saw there, Bradley Pocock has made his way to the front of the secondary group, and he is running faster than the two Frenchmen directly ahead of him. He's not running faster than the top 4 though, so I wonder whether Pocock might have had a couple of mechanical issues as a result of his early fall, or whether it is simply a case of him getting caught in the rhythm of the lower runners further down the field. Pocock now 37 seconds back from the race leader Mike Vallard. There's no way he's going to get there. I think 5th place is a realistic opportunity for him, because Blaine Blackwell even is 20 seconds up the road in P4. There is Justin Sykes in second position behind Mike Vallard. Third place with Dominic Foreman, then as a reminder, Blaine Blackwell in fourth position, then the two Frenchmen, and Bradley Pocock sitting in P7. Groups and battles further back down the order, worth watching as well. But Bradley Pocock has now caught up to that French duo that I was talking about, over a second lap faster than both of the riders directly ahead of him. Pocock across the front as they came over the tabletop of the number 45 Raphael Bezassier, and Pocock looking for a way to make that move stick, because up ahead of him is Valentin Pentier, who looks to be slower than the two riders directly behind him. We could have a three-way fight here over P5. Positions changing further back down the order as well. Scott Pullman getting muscled aside. I think that's by Mads Frostholm, who comes through for a position, and now Louis Dutton having a go. That will be for 13th place behind Mads Frostholm, who's now come through for P12. Here is Bradley Pocock. Now, how far can he get in this race? He appeared to have made progress, but couldn't find a way to get that move done cleanly on Raphael Bezassier and Valentin Pentier. So two riders he will be in the mix with in the latter stages of this race. Isolated now, the top 4 increasingly. Blaine Blackwell almost 3 seconds behind Dominic Foreman, who sits in P3. Mike Vallard encountering lap traffic here in the first moto, 9 seconds up on Sykes, and a big gap between Sykes and Dominic Foreman, who is the lead British rider at the moment, the leader of 2 British riders in fact, sitting in 3rd and 4th positions. Pocock having dispatched Raphael Bezassier is now going after P5. I did say that both Bezassier and Pocock were faster than Pentier, but at the moment it looks as though Bezassier has been dropped off slightly, and it's between the number 11 and the 57 now over P5, the most likely position to change in the latter stages. Pentier setting a new personal best last time around. Pocock, though, still 7/10 of a second faster and appears to be reeling him in, and that's going to be the focus of the latter stage of this race. Time is ticking away. The gap is going to be a lot less as they cross the timing beam this time around to complete 10 laps. It's Pentier, but only by 8/10 of a second. So Pocock hasn't really eaten up too much more. Still close for 5th and 6th positions though, and one error from the Frenchman, and it'll be Pocock through into P5. A damage limitation ride here from Bradley Pocock, who's attempting to find a way past Valentin Pentier over P5. The rest of the top 10 positions looking largely settled now. David Lamb close to the tail of Jody Burton in 8th and 9th, but at the moment that one seems fairly settled down. But unsettled is 5th position, where Bradley Pocock has managed to cut his way through. Diving down the inside, Valentin Pentier determined not to be undone, and in the end Pocock has to put in a definitive block pass to claim that P5. Pentier was not done and dusted once Pocock got alongside him, went for a lunge down the inside. Pocock saw it coming and switched it back nicely across the front of the Frenchman, claims 5th position in the end, but it's going to be a gap too far to bridge for him to try and get on terms with the top 4. Mike Vallard leads the way. He's backed off the pace over the last lap or so. In fact, over 3 seconds slower than Justin Sykes, who's directly behind him in P2, and almost 7 seconds slower than his fastest lap of the race set in the early stages. So Vallard now looking comfortable. He knows he's just easing his way to the first victory of this 2018 Minibike World Championship, ahead of Justin Sykes, who's got a 17-second gap behind him to Dominic Foreman. And here is Mike Vallard then, heading towards the closing stages of race number 1. A significant margin in hand, time to look over his shoulder, time to signal to his pit crew and team as well. Around the final turn comes Mike Vallard, the reigning world champion, wins the opening moto of the 2018 Minibike World Championship. Creditable ride from him. He had to fight his way through to the front, but he'd done that by the end of the first full lap. Justin Sykes now comes over the line to claim 2nd position. 5 seconds eventually the gap between the top 2. Sykes showed in the early part of that race that he had the pace to live with Vallard, but the Frenchman had made a far better break. 3rd over the line, Dominic Foreman, best of the rest, almost 20 seconds in the end behind the top 2. So Foreman and the rest of the lead runners within the lead quintet will have some head scratching and some work to do before the second moto here at Champs Park. Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman, the 2 top British riders then. Bradley Pocock coming over the line in the end, 42 seconds back from the race winner Mike Vallard, his main title rival from 2017, getting the better of him in the opening moto, and by a 9-point margin as well. The gap from 1st to 5th position. 3 different nationalities in the top 3 places then, in the first of 5 races in this 2018 Minibike World Championship. "15 seconds on the board for the second moto of the 2018 Minibike World Championship from Champs Park here in Kettering. We are underway. Fast start from the number 57, Bradley Pocock. Good one as well from the number 291, James Cook. And Mike Vallard is having to scrap for all he's worth. 3 abreast as they come around the hairpin. Vallard has managed to pick off Dominic Foreman, who's relegated down to 4th, and then get around the outside of Sebastian Kergar and through up into 2nd position. Now we're released to see the rivalry that we expected in the first moto between the number 57, Brad Pocock, and the number 140, Mike Vallard, the reigning champion and winner of the opening moto, who's setting off in pursuit. Pocock will be desperate for the victory here, having conceded 9 points following his fall in the early stages of the first moto, and having taken the whole shot in the second, it is Pocock who has a real opportunity here. Further back down the order, Blaine Blackwell has fallen on the opening lap, so he, having finished up in the top 5 in race number 1, is going to have to do his work from the lower order of the field. It's Pocock who leads ahead of Mike Vallard in 2nd, Dominic Foreman. It is who sits in third. Another good start for him. He finished third in race number 1. Not such a good start for Justin Sykes, who was outside of the top 10 as they crossed the timing beam for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see Sykes and indeed Blackwell work their way through the field in the remainder of this second moto. Damage limitation rides for them. But it's Bradley Pocock versus Mike Vallard. The direct confrontation at the moment up front. Vallard already starting to probe for a way through. They were nose to tail earlier in the lap. Vallard slipping off the back of Bradley Pocock ever so slightly, but there's not been much more than half a second between them at any stage in this race. Dominic Foreman, almost 2 seconds back from the top 2 now, is starting to slip out of contention. Vallard faster than Bradley Pocock, but only by a fraction as they complete the first full lap, and Vallard then getting a little bit out of shape. He cuts to the inside line. Pocock has the momentum and holds on for the moment. Third position then with Foreman, fourth with Sebastian Kiergaard. Valentin Pentier putting another good effort in. He sits in P5. He's the next potential victim for Justin Sykes, who's already worked his way up into 6th position. But as for the top 2, nose to tail now, no doubt about it. Vallard looks to the inside line. Pocock holds firm. He has to run wide onto the outside of the berm to hold position, but he does so, and now it's up to Vallard to try something different. Pocock it is who has track position. Vallard, though, it is who has momentum, and Vallard, as they come towards the tabletop, looking significantly faster, goes for the outside line. Pocock moves to block. Vallard has the cutback and has first position. Mike Vallard leads the way, just as he did in the first moto. He's come through on the opening couple of laps to lead, and it's Bradley Pocock who will be intensely frustrated with that. He got sucked into trying to defend against Mike Vallard, and in the end was dummied, and a perfect cutback from the Frenchman to lead the way at the end of 2 completed laps, and it's a significant advantage because Pocock has dropped right off, and I did see something fall off his machine during that last lap, and I wonder whether that could potentially be the cause of Pocock's inherent lack of pace on that last lap. A 1 minute 17 flat compared to a 1 minute 12.8 from Mike Vallard. We now turn our attentions to the battle for 4th position. 3 riders tucked in together, just 1.2 seconds separating them. Justin Sykes, having cleared David Lamb and moved up into the top 6, has had to work to get onto the tail of 4th and 5th position, but they're involved in their own duel. Valentin Pentier was a second faster than Sebastian Kiergaard last time around in the race for 4th position, and Justin Sykes faster than the pair of them. New personal best last time around from Pentier, who tries to defend. He's been passed by Sykes, but now makes a lunge back through down the inside, just as he did on Bradley Pocock in the first moto. This time though, Sykes is wise to it, makes the cutback and passes 2 riders in 1 move. Stunning work from the American. Best overtaking manoeuvre we've seen so far here today as Justin Sykes passes Valentin Pentier and Sebastian Kiergaard. 2 for the price of 1, and more drama further down the order for Blaine Blackwell. The number 71 has gone down, and he was already outside of the top 10 positions, and Blaine Blackwell working overtime to try and get back in contention for a top 5 slot has ended up falling. And just to add to the drama here at Champs Park, the rain has started to come down in Kettering as well. You could not ask for much more drama in this second moto. For the moment then, the focus on the battle for 5th position between Sebastian Kiergaard and Valentin Pentier. Justin Sykes has broken 2 seconds clear of this duo already. 1 minute 15 flat last lap around, the fastest of anyone other than current race leader Mike Vallard. Has down the inside goes Pentier to make the move. Sebastian Kiergaard though has the inside round and manages to claim track position. Good block pass. Pentier uses his momentum, but he's now stuck on the outside line, and Sebastian Kiergaard is having to defend, but he's doing so robustly as he holds on to what is now 5th position, the pair having been passed by Justin Sykes. So it's Mike Vallard who leads, Dominic Foreman in second, and Bradley Pocock has peeled off the track. Problems for Pocock, who drops out of contention here. That releases, well, Dominic Foreman was already through, so Bradley Pocock must be suffering from some real dramas here, but it's going to enable Sebastian Kiergaard to move back up to 4th position and Valentin Pentier to move up to P5. So not sure quite what has happened for Bradley Pocock, but he's receiving some off-track ministrations as further up the field, Justin Sykes takes advantage and now moves into P2. Dominic Foreman was 1.5 seconds slower than Sykes last time around, and Sykes manages to come through for 2nd position. Again, he's got over 10 seconds to make up on Mike Vallard, so it seems unlikely but Vallard himself has declared that he doesn't like tricky track conditions. He's not a fan of wet weather racing, and that could be an opportunity for his rivals to make up ground here. You can see the rain is really bucketing it down, and large margins can be won and lost when wet weather starts to play havoc with riders who are in contention. Through comes Valentin Pentier, finally now on Sebastian Kergar for fourth position. It's a move that's been long in the making, but the concern now in the context of the championship will be what happens to all sorts of riders right the way through the field. At the bottom of the hill there, Mads Frostholm has gone down, the number 145, and we are starting to lose riders now in wet conditions, particularly some of the less experienced riders further down the order. Sebastian Kergar dropping well back in wet conditions. He was 4 seconds slower than Valentin Pentier last time around. Vallard and Seitz running similar pace out front, but Seitz is starting to gain on Vallard. Vallard has more to lose, of course. He's got a significant lead, 14 seconds last time across the timing beam in favour of the Frenchman, as they now tiptoe their way through under yellow flags, of course, because of those two fallen riders at the bottom of the hill. Mads Frostholm the first to fall, and that's triggered a couple of others as well as the Dane slips outside of the top 10. Bradley Pocock now back up and running, as you can see, managed to hold on to a top 10 space. He returned to the track within the top 10, and now he's challenging for 6th position on the tail of Jody Burton, and here is the move. At the end of the yellow flag zone, he comes through, and he's right now on the tail of Sebastian Kergar, who is not enjoying the wet weather whatsoever, whose pace has been completely killed by the rain, and Pocock comes through for 5th position, and 2 moves in a matter of a couple of corners for Bradley Pocock, who is now released to try and chase after the top 4. This has been an even better damage limitation ride from Bradley Pocock than his first, if anything, as Mike Vallard still leads ahead of Justin Seitz, almost 2 seconds a lap faster. Seitz at the moment in 2nd position, but I don't think he's going to have time to really make up enough ground to challenge for the victory. He will though be able to consolidate 2nd position, well clear of Dominic Foreman. Massive gap then behind P3. Again, Bradley Pocock chasing after Valentin Pentier, and it looks like 4th position will be the best that Pocock can do in this one. And after finishing P5 in race number 1, that is far from ideal, as James Cook now gets into a battle with Scott Pullman, and Pullman relegates him outside of the top 9. Pullman coming through then for the 9th position that matches his race number, and James Cook relegated down to 10th place, and it might not be long before he gets relegated down to 11th, because Daniel Lee is closing on him as well. Back with the leader, Mike Vallard. He's not looking quite as comfortable in the wet weather as he did in the early stages of the race, but he's got such a significant time margin that he'll be looking to take the victory now with some comfort over Justin Seitz, who sits in 2nd place. Dominic Foreman coming through to complete another lap, well adrift of the top 2, in fact over 10 seconds now behind Justin Seitz, who's making his way through the lap runners diligently, attempting to close on Mike Vallard, but the gap is still over 10 seconds between these top 2. Valentin Pentier versus Bradley Pocock, a separate battle further down the order that Pocock has now won to come through for P4, leaving the Frenchman down in 5th position, but another consistent result for the number 11, and I think he'll be satisfied enough with this. Just behind Pentier is Jody Burton. Good riding at the moment from Jody Burton, who is starting to gain ground, and that could be the next fight because there's 7 seconds between them, but Burton was over 3 seconds faster than Pentier last lap around. Plain sailing though at the moment for Mike Vallard, winner of 4 of the 5 motos in Doncaster last season, and he looks set to continue his winning ways. He opened with a trio of victories in 2017, and he certainly looks set to make it a back-to-back win at the start of 2018's World Championship campaign. Vallard, who has raced regularly in France but has also competed in a few rounds in the Minibike British Championship this season. He actually finished the whole campaign in 8th place, Vallard, just on the strength of 3 completed rounds. Well, he has been the man to beat all weekend long so far here in Kettering, and looks set to be the man to beat in the remaining 3 motos of this World Championship, because it's Mike Vallard who's well on his way towards a 2nd consecutive victory, as Bradley Pocock makes his way through lapped runners, sitting up in 4th position now. Surely that's the best he can manage, barring unforeseen issues for the riders up ahead of him. He's back on the pace of the leaders, Valade and Sykes running in the 1:20s, as we see Sebastian Kierkegaard, who's pulled off to the side of the circuit, the number 138, a retirement in race number 1. It looks set to be another retirement potentially in race number 2, and that man cannot buy luck. He's had so much misfortune last season with injury. He has finished number 2 in the Minibike British Championship in 2018, but his attempt at a title tilt is already run its course, because failing to score in the first 2 races will leave him out of contention. Mike Valade makes it 2 wins out of 2, a maximum 50 points from the first 2 races, but the consolation for his rivals will be Justin Sykes and Dominic Foreman have finished in 2nd and 3rd positions in each of the opening 2 races, so some damage limitation for those 2 riders in particular, who are still very much in the mix. Not at all a good result though for Bradley Pocock, who's going to take a 4th position finish here. In fact, he's still circulating ahead of claiming that 4th position. There he is, 4th place for Bradley Pocock, better than the 5th place from race number 1, but he'll have a massive 16-point margin now to make up on Mike Valade, who's been untouchable in the first 2 races, so no real signs that it will be easy to make up such large points deficits in the remaining 3 races this weekend. Valade wins it ahead of Sykes and Foreman, an identical finishing order in the top 3 in the opening 2 races of this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Confirmation there of the result then. Valade wins it ahead of Sykes and Foreman. Pocock an improved result in 4th position. Pentier with 5th position. Both of those riders benefiting from the retirements of Sebastian Kierkegaard, but also from problems for Blaine Blackwell. And Blackwell, after scoring 18 points in race number 1, drops all the way down to 9th position in the overall standings, with just 5 points eventually secured in that race. He does get there ahead of Sebastian Kierkegaard, who wheels it over the line for a consolation 3 points, but that's not going to be enough to keep either of those 2 riders in contention for the World Championship, as Mike Valade makes it 2 wins out of 2. Reigning world number 4 Justin Sykes has got off to a strong start in his latest title tilt with 2 runner-up positions, and Dominic Foreman has brought his British Championship form with him to international competition, but can either become the first rider to lower the colours of reigning champion and current points leader Mike Valade, the winner of the opening 2 races of the 2018 Minibike World Championship here in Kettering. Race number 3, the last of the day 1 action, gets underway. Bradley Pocock straight across the front of Mike Valade, merciless in the run down to the first turn. He and Dominic Foreman have picked it up, and down goes Dominic Foreman. Bradley Pocock claims the whole shot, bunching in the midfield as they try to avoid Foreman, and they get hooked up. Raphael Bezassier up the inside of his fellow countryman Mike Valade comes through for 3rd position. The top 4 have well and truly broken from the rest of the group that were impeded around the first turn. It's Bradley Pocock who picks it up ahead of Justin Sykes in 2nd position. Dominic Foreman only now getting going, and the rider who came into this race up in 3rd in the standings is going to have to do the chasing now from the back of the field, but it's Bradley Pocock who capitalises with the front 3 starting to emerge. Mike Valade, having passed Raphael Bezassier, is now off in pursuit of Justin Sykes, the American runner-up in the opening 2 races, who sits 2nd once again here, but almost gets off the side of the bike there. The rider's really struggling after the rainy conditions earlier on here today. Even though the sun is back out, there are damp patches that the riders have to negotiate. It's Mike Valade now giving chase. It's Justin Sykes in 2nd position. Bradley Pocock hoping that Sykes will hold back Valade long enough for him to escape out in front. Pocock hasn't had many opportunities to lead this weekend. He's had to work his way through from further down the order in both of the 2 motos so far, but now that he's hit the front, he can only hope that Valade is held at bay for some time. The Frenchman, though, has shown plenty of speed through the whoop section this weekend, and again has used that to good effect to close right onto the tail of Justin Sykes, the pair nose to tail as they come through for the first time towards the end of the first full lap. Sykes holds track position. Vallard holds the inside line. He ran the outside, cut back to the inside, and then slid straight across the apex of the turn and into the path of Justin Sykes to make second position his own. Aggressive manoeuvre there from Mike Vallard, but he knew that he needed to get off in pursuit of Bradley Pocock, who comes towards the end of the first full lap. It'll be interesting to catch a glimpse of the times. A 1:26.6 for Pocock, a 1:26.3 for Mike Vallard, and Pocock bogging down there on the inside line, and Vallard has the momentum. He'll try and make good use of it. Up on the berm on the outside, Pocock has gone defensive. Vallard building up his speed, goes for the cutback, side by side, and Mike Vallard hits the front ahead of Bradley Pocock, who's relegated to second position, and Justin Sykes, who will be next to try and challenge him from third. So dominance being shown once again by Mike Vallard in this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Bradley Pocock will be intensely frustrated to have dropped the lead twice to Vallard. He's gone down. Down goes the number 57. He's passed by Justin Sykes. How quickly will he be able to get that machine back going? And will he have done any damage to it in the fall? For the moment, it's only the one position he's lost, Bradley Pocock, and he gets the bike back started, still up ahead of Sebastian Kierkegaard, who sits in fourth position. So just one place lost by Bradley Pocock, but a whole lot of time, because the top three were running significantly faster than anyone else on track. In fact, last time around, Justin Sykes, Mike Vallard and Bradley Pocock all at least 8 seconds faster than anyone else out there, particularly Sebastian Kierkegaard, who set a 1:37 compared to a 1:28 from Sykes and a 1:26.6 from Bradley Pocock. Cutting through up the inside line, Dominic Foreman is now back up inside the top 10. Remember, after his fall in the early stages, he's had to make his way through from the tail end of the field, but there really is a disparity in terms of pace. Foreman running in the 1:38 and over 14 seconds faster last time around than James Cook, so it was no great surprise it didn't take long for him to dispatch Cook. Now he's going off in pursuit of tougher quarries. Blaine Blackwell in 8th position and Valentin Pentier, who sits at the moment in 9th. Mike Vallard with a new fastest lap of the race. Last time around a 1:25.1. Justin Sykes with a 1:28.9, and Bradley Pocock costing himself 20 seconds with that fall, a 1:49. So it's Pocock who's now got the work to do. Vallard and Sykes leading comfortably, 18 seconds the gap between second and third positions now. Pocock having cleared off really. Sebastian Kierkegaard initially on his tail, but has now broken clear. We return our focus to Dominic Foreman, who is now on the tail of David Lamb, the 871, so Foreman must have passed Pentier already and is now closing on David Lamb, who sits in 8th position. So here comes Dominic Foreman as they reach the bottom of that massive hill. Foreman looking for a way past Lamb, already significantly faster, 5 seconds faster last lap around, and Foreman just in the same place that he made the pass on James Cook, but in a slightly different way. This time it's an inside block pass, and Dominic Foreman, having come through from the back of the field, knows this is a crucial damage limitation ride in his contest for a place on the World Championship podium this season. He sat, remember, in third position, 10 points back from Mike Vallard coming into this race, Dominic Foreman, and he will be as keen as possible to push as high as possible in this race, and potentially fourth position still within his reach. The top three look like they might just be a little bit beyond him, pushing clear out in front. Justin Sykes slowing a little on this lap visibly. Mike Vallard out in front and now 6 seconds up. So it looks like Vallard is on a relentless march towards a third consecutive victory, and that Sykes just doesn't have an answer. Here is Mike Vallard, the Frenchman, encountering lap traffic. He's just got to pick his way through carefully, not be held up to too great an extent. Bradley Pocock still in third position, set a new fastest lap of the race last time around, but I don't think he's going to be able to make enough of an impression, barring any issues or errors from the riders up ahead of him. I suppose that's all that Pocock can do at this stage, is push as hard as he can and hope for either Vallard or Sykes to hit problems, just as Pocock did earlier on in this race, remember, while sitting up in second position. Vallard coming through to complete another lap, and since the rain hasn't fallen, the riders trying to pick up their pace. Oh, Blaine Blackwell's run off the track. Blackwell runs wide, and that makes it all too easy for Dominic Foreman to come through and claim another position. Dominic Foreman then up another place, and now his next attempt will be to fight his way past Jody Burton, who sits up in P6. And Burton has also gone down. drama for Jody Burton. Dominic Foreman will now try and capitalise on that, and he does so. Dominic Foreman then up into 6th place, and Jody Burton, having already dropped behind Raphael Bezassier, now loses ground to Dominic Foreman. He'll be frustrated about that because Jody Burton was up in 5th position until a sequence of errors, and now drops down to 7th place and could be under attack from Blaine Blackwell as well. Meanwhile, Dominic Foreman setting off in pursuit of Raphael Bezassier, and 7 seconds faster than him on that last lap. Looks set to make his way past quite swiftly. Foreman makes the cutback. Bezassier covers it for the moment at least. The Frenchman holding on to 5th position. Not much in it between these two last time around as they cross the timing beam to set new laps. A new personal best for Raphael Bezassier. Dominic Foreman cuts down the inside but then falls in his path. Bezassier gets all out of shape up on the outside line as he tries to get back on the power. That means Foreman hasn't lost too much ground, and he cuts through on the inside line, and a bump pass I think is the only way you can describe that, as Dominic Foreman comes through eventually for 5th position. So one lap where Foreman gained a lot of ground on Bezassier, who'd been in all sorts of dramas. On lap number 6, Bezassier got it back on the island, past Jody Burton, set a new personal best, but Foreman has passed him anyway, through for P5. Vallard is who leads, Pocock in 2nd, Sykes in 3rd, so Bradley Pocock has picked up a place from Justin Sykes, and out of reach of our cameras, Bradley Pocock recovers a place, so Sykes must have hit problems because he has dropped 8 seconds on that last lap alone to Bradley Pocock, who is just a couple of seconds ahead of him now. And as we see Blaine Blackwell now challenging on the tail of Raphael Bezassier. This will be over 6th position. I did say that Bezassier had dropped into the path of Dominic Foreman, and we'd seen Foreman's pass on Blaine Blackwell when Blackwell ran off the track altogether. So here they are now fighting it out over 6th and 7th positions, and it looks as though Blaine Blackwell has found his way past now Raphael Bezassier, who drops down into P7. So plenty of change from 5th position through to 8th and 9th. But not so much change at the front of the field, aside from Justin Sykes getting into problems and Bradley Pocock finding his way through. Sykes is now back up and running, but it doesn't look as though he's going to be able to make up the lost ground. The gap now 9 seconds between Pocock and Sykes for 2nd and 3rd positions, and Mike Vallard continues his march towards victory as he enters the final lap of this 3rd moto here at Champs Park. Mike Vallard has backed off the pace over the last lap or so. 1:32 was his last lap around. Bradley Pocock significantly faster, in fact 4 seconds faster on that previous lap, but still has 11 seconds to make up. Not bad going when you consider that Pocock was at one stage 23 seconds back. But even a hot rhythm from Bradley Pocock cannot get him back into contention for victory here. It will be his best result nonetheless, as we see dramas further down the order. Sebastian Kiergaard just coming up to lap one of the lower order riders, and they then fall. A real disparity in pace, as I said earlier on in this race, but the top 8 running vaguely similar, and then a big gap. The pace drops off from 9th position down, and Mike Vallard is merrily making his way through, lapping riders right the way through the field and up into the top 10 now. Vallard, I think, has made it through to lap riders. So impressive stuff from Mike Vallard. You can see there Blaine Blackwell is the next rider that he's going to come up to lap, and Blaine Blackwell sitting up in 7th position, though that confirms my theory then that Mike Vallard is on the march and well inside the top 10 in terms of riders. He is coming through to lap. We just caught a glimpse of Dominic Foreman there up in 5th position. 1 minute 17 behind the current race leader. Big gap behind 3rd position, Justin Sykes, 25 seconds. Sykes is behind Vallard to Sebastian Kiergaard in 4th position, so I can't see any further places changing. Blackwell unlaps himself in the run down to the line, and Mike Vallard makes it a hat-trick of victories on the opening day here at Champs Park, and it's celebrations for the reigning world champion, who is well on his way to a 2nd consecutive title in this series. Mike Vallard winning in the end by 7 seconds over Bradley Pocock. Justin Sykes now making his way through the final sequence and around the final turn to take 3rd position. His worst result of the day, but in the top 3 in each of his 3 outings. The consolation for Vallard, with Bradley Pocock finishing 2nd, is that he gains more points over Sykes than he did in either of the first 2 races, and Vallard is able to further extend his leading margin out in front at the top of the standings now by 9 points over Justin Sykes. Bradley Pocock will move up into third in the point standings, with Dominic Foreman taking fifth position, although he's yet to come over the line. Such is the difference behind the top three. Sebastian Kjærgaard not too far ahead of Dominic Foreman, but far enough that he will hold on for fourth position. That's a much improved result for Sebastian Kjærgaard. After just 3 points from the opening two races, he now moves on to 21 with the 18 points he scores in this third moto. But the focus on Bradley Pocock and his fall earlier in the race, not stopping him from taking second position in the end. He moves level on points with Dominic Foreman, who with an excellent recovery ride comes through for fifth position. So confirmation of the result, and now confirmation of the new championship standings at the end of the opening day. And with two motos still remaining, Mike Vallard leads it on 75 points ahead of Justin Sykes, Bradley Pocock and Dominic Foreman, the other main contenders, a quartet of challengers for this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Viewers from outside of the UK will not believe me when I say that we've had 2 months of sunshine in the lead up to this event, but the wet weather has come in just in time for the 2018 Minibike World Championship here in Kettering, and things have worsened for the second day of action. The final two races of the series about to get underway. The penultimate race of the weekend then, the fourth moto. Reminder, Mike Vallard leads them coming into this one, 9 points up on Justin Sykes of the USA, his nearest rival, and 19 points clear of Bradley Pocock and Dominic Foreman, the other main contenders. 5 seconds till the gate drops, and it's going to be mudlarks here at Champs Park. Underway with a fast start from the outside from Dominic Foreman. Strong one on the inside from Bradley Pocock. Mike Vallard's made it well. Pocock cuts across the front of Vallard and almost knocks him off entirely. Vallard collects his balance and holds on to fourth position as Bradley Pocock moves through on the inside line of Dominic Foreman. Pocock was there on the inside of Vallard coming into the first turn and just seemed to release it and enable himself to move straight across the front and into the side of Vallard, who's now recovering from fourth position. Pocock cuts to the inside on Justin Sykes to hit the front as they cross the timing beam for the first time. Pocock then out in front ahead of Justin Sykes in second. Vallard has swiftly moved through at the expense of Dominic Foreman and is starting to break. The top three pulling a gap then, but the top two with a bit of a margin for the moment at least over Mike Vallard, the winner of the opening three races of this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Has found himself in adverse conditions before, with mixed weather conditions in the second two motos here yesterday, but nothing quite like this. You can see that the track staff have had to put in an incredible amount of work to get things raceable, because offline and indeed off track is quite incredible, the depth of standing water. But on the racing line itself, well, the riders are proving themselves adept at getting round for the moment at least. 3 retirements before the gate even dropped on this race, so it's 15 out of the 18 runners still going here at Champs Park, and it's Bradley Pocock who leads the way up ahead of Justin Sykes and Mike Vallard, as down goes Sebastian Kjærgaard, the number 138, the Dane, clattering into the back of the number 871 David Lamb. Kjærgaard will try to get it back up and running, but he's gone right to the rear of the field. Blaine Blackwell, the number 71, was at the back coming off the first turn after problems in the initial scrum, and even Blackwell has managed to pass Sebastian Kjærgaard now, who goes down to 15th position. Back up to the front, no such problems for Bradley Pocock. Breaking clear of the rest of the group is crucial in these type of conditions to avoid the roost. You can already see the front mudguard of Justin Sykes completely covered in the roost from Bradley Pocock up ahead of him, and to some extent Mike Vallard might not be too disappointed to have a bit of a gap between himself and the top two, just to have some clear running and improved visibility. Further back, here is James Cook versus Scott Pohlman. That's the battle for 8th position, so the field really starting to splinter early on, and Cook fighting Scott Pullman for all he's worth, but Pullman looking faster at this stage of the race. Cook's done a good job from the starts in particular this weekend, but is now having to defend, and he hasn't been able to do so in the opening 2 races. He sits in 10th position in the standings coming into this race, despite even having made a hole shot in one of his rides. Through now comes Pullman as they come down the hill, sliding down the hill almost. It doesn't look like they're able to pick the racing lines exactly as they want to, but Pullman will be relieved because he's got a bit of clear air now ahead of him. As I said, we've got the field really starting to splinter, and there is a bit of a deficit to the top 7 who are pulling clear. 8th place is with Scott Pullman, 9th now is with James Cook, and there is a real group emerging behind Cook as well. The number 95, Anton Hafkost, and the number 81, Blaine Blackwell, who has recovered up from 14th position. As cutting to the inside, James Cook attempts to make a recovery move for 8th position. Cook then sitting in 9th. You can see the riders directly behind him, Hafkost and Blaine Blackwell, who, as I said, has had a lot of work to do in this race once again. It's been a disastrous weekend for Blaine Blackwell and Sebastian Kjærgaard, 2 of the top 4 in the Minibike British Championship this season. Blackwell comes into this race down in 8th and Kjærgaard down in 15th. Both of them trying to make recoveries up through the field. There's a potential move for Blaine Blackwell. He gets down to the inside line of Hafkost, the Frenchman, 13th in the points coming into this race, but for the moment defending against Blaine Blackwell. And actually, if anything, Blackwell looking under greater threat of losing a position to David Lamb, who started this race well but had problems on the opening lap or so and has dropped back through the field. He, though, is skirmishing on the inside now of Blaine Blackwell. Blackwell eventually gets the power down and pulls clear. The number 71 then yo-yoing through the field, but for the moment holding on ahead of David Lamb. Real fights right the way through the pack towards the back of the field from 8th position all the way down to 14th is quite closely contested. The top positions seem to have settled down for the moment. No change among the top 4 or 5, and it's still Bradley Pocock who's looking set for his first race victory of the weekend. He wouldn't have wanted to wait until race number 4 to get it, but he's going to start this second day in strong fashion. Blaine Blackwell absolutely blitzing eventually Anton Hafkost, and does finally come through for that 10th position, and the next target for him is to make his way up into 9th at the expense of James Cook, the number 291, who has now dropped back from Scott Pullman. Best race of the weekend, I would suggest, for Pullman, who has been a consistent scorer in the opening 3 races. Best result so far in the 2nd moto, not such a good 3rd moto, but he's bouncing back in the 4th. There is Blaine Blackwell once again. We caught a glimpse of the race leaders, but there's been no change there, and it looks more likely that we're going to get an overtake further down the field. You can see the rain on the lens, the rain continuing to lash down here and making things tricky. Sebastian Kjærgaard now on the tail of Lamb and Hafkost, so having come through from the back of the field, got the bike back started again, he is back up and running. Cook 9th, Blackwell 10th, Hafkost 11th, Lamb 12th, Kjærgaard now coming through, and Kjærgaard defending against Louis Dutton, who sits in P14. Second to last out on track, Mathieu Provost is the only other runner well adrift of these guys, even in 15th position. Kjærgaard then has dispatched Dutton up for P13. Next on his agenda is to pass David Lamb. Justin Sipes just about to lap Blaine Blackwell, who has now claimed 9th position and is challenging Scott Pullman for 8th. Pullman runs wide there. Blackwell not quite able to capitalise, although Pullman's run wide again on that twisty sequence, and through eventually does come Blaine Blackwell just by minding his own business, and quite unexpectedly Scott Pullman basically just got miles out of the way, and through came Blackwell. So a recovery ride, far from spectacular, far from pretty in these wet conditions, but Blaine Blackwell back up inside the top 10, and we'll see what further impression he can make now, having made it up into 8th position. I did say there's a bit of a gap between Jody Burton, who sits in 7th, and the rest of the group from 8th position down, but Blaine Blackwell now attempting to bridge that gap. Meanwhile, Mike Vallard, who has been on the tail end of Justin Sykes throughout this race, has put on a spurt over the last lap or so and is now right on the American's tail. And Sykes knows that the current series leader is breathing down his neck. 9 points between them coming into this race. Sykes with an opportunity to make back 2 with 1 race remaining. This would really set us up nicely for a grandstand finale to this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Sykes making his way through the lapped runners with the series leader Mike Vallard right on his tail. Oh, and Sykes has gone down. Sykes falls in the path of Mike Vallard. Both riders scrambling to get their machines back up and running. How many positions will they lose? Blaine Blackwell unlapping himself there on the inside, but that's not too much of a concern. Big gap there was behind the top 3. As you can see, the 2 of them desperately trying to get their machines back up and running. Mike Vallard, matter of a metre or so ahead at the moment of Justin Sykes, but whoever gets their bike started fastest will claim 2nd position, and away is Mike Vallard still holding P2 while Justin Sykes still struggles with his bike. And this is disaster for the American, who looked set to peg back points on his main championship rival and the current leader. He's just been passed by Dominic Foreman, who goes through now for 3rd position, and he's now got a margin to make up on the points leader Mike Vallard, who will not be too disappointed to lose 3 points to Bradley Pocock, the current race leader. And 2nd would be an excellent damage limitation ride. I'm sure he would have been delighted to claim a maximum 5 wins out of 5, which he was unable to do last season, but his primary focus will be on claiming this title. And a 2nd position to Pocock, who's 19 points behind him in the standings, would be an outstanding result for Mike Vallard. Now the focus turning to Jody Burton, who's seen his margin over Blaine Blackwell completely eaten away. The number 717 going up against the number 71 over 7th position. The top 6 now looking largely settled. Sykes, having dropped back, is trying to fight his way through, but there's not much he can do about Mike Vallard up ahead of him in 2nd position. And it's going to be a race victory for Bradley Pocock. After the dramas for Vallard and Sykes, Pocock has had an unassailable lead since then. Blackwell comes through on the inside, and Jody Burton with no sign of resistance as Blackwell completes his recovery and up to 7th position. We're in the closing stages now, so there's no way he's going to be able to make up any further ground than that. Final sequence of turns now, penultimate bend for Bradley Pocock. He's had to wait far longer than he might have liked, but out of the final turn, the British champion takes race number 4 and becomes the first rider to lower the colours of Mike Vallard. The Frenchman will still take 2nd. Pocock looks over his left shoulder just to see where Vallard is out on track, and he will take P2 up ahead in the end of Dominic Foreman and Justin Sykes. Disappointment for Sykes, his worst race result of the weekend, and misfortune to an extent as he fell in the path of Mike Vallard and was unable to recover from there. And it does mean that although in the early stages we looked set for a real dramatic closure to this event, in the end things settling down. You can see Sykes there making his way through lapped runners in the latter stages of the race, and there's nothing that Sykes can do to get back on terms with Mike Vallard, who will further extend his points lead. It didn't look early on as though that was going to be the case. It looked as though Sykes was going to peg back 2 of that 9-point margin, but he has to settle in the end for 4th position behind Dominic Foreman. It's Pocock who wins it, Vallard in 2nd, Foreman back among the top 3 with 3rd place, and 4th position going the way of Justin Sykes after his late recovery final lap pass on Raphael Bezassier. So we look at the scoring ahead of the final motor of this 2018 Minibike World Championship. Mike Vallard suffering his first defeat, but still extends his championship lead by another 4 points, up to 15 points the gap then with 1 race remaining. Bradley Pocock with victory continues his gradually improving scorecard for the weekend and moves to within a point of the silver medal position currently occupied by Justin Sykes. But in terms of the focus for the gold itself, Mike Vallard is within touching distance of back-to-back world titles. The 5th and final moto of the 2018 Minibike World Championship, with 4 riders still in mathematical contention for the title, but Mike Vallard needing just a top 10 finish from the decider to to be crowned world champion for a second consecutive season. Watch out for the battle for second overall as well between Justin Sipes and Bradley Pocock as we wait for the gate to drop, and the last of the action here in Kettering gets underway. Fast start from the very outside from Blaine Blackwell, but it's Mike Villard who's going to hit the first turn first. He's gone up to the outside line though, and through on the inside of him comes Justin Sipes, so it's Sipes who leads it. It's Villard relegated down to second place. He's under pressure from Dominic Foreman in third, and Bradley Pocock's gone very, very wide coming off turn number 2, but manages to regain fourth position with Blaine Blackwell dropping down to P5 ahead of Raphael Bezassier, who sits in 6th and leading a train of riders behind him. 7th place is with David Lamb, and then 8th position at the moment is with James Cook, but down the inside of him now comes Valentin Pentier to take P8 away. So Pentier up to 8th position behind Lamb in 7th and Bezassier in 6th as Mike Villard is off. Mike Villard has run off the circuit altogether. He's passed by Dominic Foreman but rejoins ahead of Bradley Pocock, and Pocock now has an opportunity. He got it all wrong in the early stages, running too deep, and now he's right back on terms with Mike Villard, his main championship rival. Villard sits in 3rd position, then it's Sipes pulling away out in front. Foreman promoted up to 2nd position, close for 3rd and 4th. Pocock has given himself a little bit of an extra boost here, thunders down the inside and clatters straight into the back of Mike Villard. The pair are off the track. Pocock is liberal with his use of off-track areas before rejoining ahead of Villard, and he appears to be trying to back Villard into the pack before now escaping away. There's all sorts of gamesmanship going on here between Bradley Pocock and Mike Villard, but Pocock has now burst clear and Villard has got a bit of a gap to the rest of the group behind him. Blaine Blackwell sitting in 5th position most notably. Battle now for 9th position. Scott Polkman had got ahead of James Cook and Sebastian Kierkegaard, but Cook cuts back ahead and Kierkegaard now comes through as well. So James Cook recovering, 9th position ahead of Scott Pullman, and Pullman really was boxed out, all in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you can see the extent to which the riders are struggling with visibility just from the fact that they are absolutely coated in the track surface here at Champs Park. Looking further up the field then, Bradley Pocock, having made his way up into 3rd position. He's burst well clear of Mike Villard. Villard didn't need to get into a scrap side by side with Pocock. The risk to his race and to his championship too dramatic, so he's allowed Pocock to escape away. Remember, any top 10 finish is good enough for Villard, and Pocock can only hope for a retirement, I suspect, from the current series leader. Battle once again rejoined further down the order. Cook ahead of Kierkegaard and ahead of Pullman, and problems there for Cook. Cook stops in the middle of the apex of the turn. Kierkegaard comes through, Pullman comes through, and that looks like it might well be terminal for Cook. So James Cook, the number 291, stopping on the circuit there. The others carrying on through up ahead of him, and as they come back into our shot, Cook is no longer with that group. Louis Dutton, incidentally, from the back, now starting to challenge on the tail of Anton Hafkost. That's for 11th position, but Cook has dropped out of this race altogether, and the rest of the field all promoted one position, those riders who were behind him. As you can see, Hafkost looking over his shoulder. Dutton has an opportunity to come through and should be through quite swiftly for 11th position. So 2 places gained on 1 lap for Louis Dutton, who makes his way up into P11 and looks faster at the moment than Scott Pullman up ahead as well. Pullman, the last of the riders inside the top 10 positions, as Justin Sipes comes through. You actually saw him lap there, James Cook, who has pulled off at the side of the track. So no doubt about it, James Cook hitting real problems, and extreme disappointment for him after a consistent day that had seen him to 10th in the championship standings after the 4th moto. The battle is rejoined now for 3rd position. Bradley Pocock making good progress, but Dominic Foreman dropping back into the path of Mike Villard, and Villard will soon be able to challenge for that 3rd position. In fact, there's very little to choose between them. Pocock, having found his way past, us now set off in pursuit of the race leader Justin Sipes. Foreman though looks vulnerable. Villard is being a little bit tentative in his passing opportunity. He eventually comes through. Foreman cuts back. Villard goes all the way around the outside, and Mike Villard, who at this stage of the championship doesn't need to be pushing, well, nonetheless he's still showing that he's got plenty of speed in reserve as he comes through for that 3rd position. Separate fight further back, being led at the moment by Raphael Bezassier in 5th position, having got the better of Blaine Blackwell, and Valentin Pentier just joining the back of this group. He now sits in 7th place, having made good progress in the early laps of this race, coming through from further down the field after an underwhelming start. It is Pentier at the moment who sits in 5th position in the championship, ahead of Bezassier in 6th and Blaine Blackwell in 8th. But Bezassier with an opportunity here to reverse those positions, 5th and 6th, as he sits with a buffer ahead of his fellow countryman and main series rival. These three in the mix for 5th position in the series standings, behind the lead quartet, all of whom came into this 5th and final moto still in contention for the world title itself. But Mike Vallard, who leads it by 15 points as things stand, doing what he needs to do, even though he sits well adrift of Justin Sipes. Sipes looking comfortable out in front. Here he is, Justin Sipes of America. He's had 3 top 3 finishes this weekend already, just those 4 drop points in the 4th moto that left him with a little bit of extra work to do, as we see further down the order Bezassier running wide, and Blaine Blackwell recovers 5th position. So that really came absolutely out of nowhere, because Raphael Bezassier was running a good 5th position. We'd seen him a few moments earlier, and Blaine Blackwell somewhat opportunistically coming through for 5th position as Bezassier ran off the track, and Bezassier now loses out to Pentier as well, and this would be good enough for Pentier to claim 5th position in the championship. Bezassier will be desperate to get back through as quickly as possible as the group start to encounter lapped runners for the first time, and that adds an extra bit of challenge into the mix, but things seemingly settling down for the moment at least. Bradley Pocock has hit problems. Bradley Pocock with problems. The number 57 is going to be unlapped there by the number 871. That's David Lamb coming back through, but Pocock has now got the bike restarted. Just saw him out of the corner of my eye there, Bradley Pocock with problems, and he does get the bike back going, but that's going to have cost him plenty of time here, the British rider, on Justin Sipes, and he was starting to close Sipes down, but Sipes now has the race victory in his pocket, and surely with it will go the silver medal for the 2018 Minibike World Championship. Dominic Foreman did close in there on Bradley Pocock, but not by a significant enough margin to challenge, and Pocock is now negotiating the final turns to claim 2nd position behind Justin Sipes. It's going to be enough for 3rd in the world. Now the short wait for Mike Vallard to cross the finish line, a mere formality as Mike Vallard claims the 2018 Minibike World Championship. The inaugural title winner becomes the first ever back-to-back champion, and it's France 2 out of 2 in the series overall. Mike Vallard will be absolutely delighted. 3 different nations featuring in the podium positions for the 2018 series, with Justin Sipes taking his first race victory of the weekend, becoming the 3rd different winner, and all 3 of our weekend's winners are on the championship podium. Dominic Foreman missing out. He'll be devastated by that, but he takes a creditable 4th place on 94 championship points. Pocock finishes on 103, Sipes on 107, and your world champion for 2018 is Mike Vallard on 117. So there we have it then. Mike Vallard, the pre-event favourite, remains Minibike's world number 1 ahead of Justin Sipes and Bradley Pocock. A challenging weekend with torrential rain, particularly for the 2nd day of competition. We can only hope for better weather conditions, but the same high standard of racing when the World Championship moves to Scunthorpe in April for its 2019 edition. Join us then.